2, 1. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's live Q&A. Sorry, we're a couple seconds late here. Right off the bat, I'm going to tell you all that I am in the Philippines, and I can straight up say that this country has the worst internet I've ever seen in my whole life. So I've been trying all week to find where to sit for this live Q&A that would give me even a little bit of Wi-Fi so I could do this live call with Joanne. So welcome, Joanne.
Hey, Becca. Sorry, I'm just queuing up my laptop so I can follow along. Hi, everybody. I'm in Ottawa and I have great Wi-Fi. I'm just like super tired because I'm jet lagged from Thailand. So we are all wonky at the moment.
So hopefully it doesn't sound as choppy for you guys as it does for me. I'm just going to keep going like normal and hope that this is working. So if you guys are watching, please tell us in the comments if this is working okay for you, because it's a little bit hard to tell, but we're going to do our best because we have a lot of really exciting and fun stuff to cover in the next, I don't know, hour and a half. So if at some point I cut out, Joanne knows what to do. She knows the deal. She's just going to keep going. So if my face disappears from here at some point, don't worry about it. I'm going to try and at least be in the comments so I can be helping out and stuff. But worst case scenario, Joanne will take it by herself, which I feel totally confident that she can do. Okay, someone said it's working. It's working just fine. So we're good for now.
Hello from Finland.
Fingers
Yay.
crossed.
Germany. Awesome. Hi, everybody.
So I think it makes the most sense, because there's a chance that I might cut out here, that we should just do our big announcement right off the bat. I know that some people are waiting. I think so.
Okay.
But I think just right before we do that, some people might not know who you are. So if you could give us a rundown of who you are, what you do, how we know each other, which is kind of a fun story, and then we'll do our announcement.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Joanne Lozon. I am In Detail Creative on Facebook and Instagram. In 1992, Becca was only one. I founded my company In Detail, and at the time it was a brand and publication design studio. And so I helped clients, corporations, entertainers, tourism industry design their brand and their corporate identity. So websites, brochures, logos, you name it. So I've got a lot of experience. How many years is that? Like 27 years experience. Working with clients and quoting jobs. So I have a lot of experience figuring out the price point of my time and energy and talent. In about 2014, I started sharing my artwork because I've always been an artist. But, you know, as an artist, you'd often hold your art close to your heart and you keep it a little bit quiet. But in 2014, I started sharing it online, specifically some modern calligraphy that I was practicing. And people started asking me to teach them how to do it. So I started workshops. And, one of my workshop participants was Becca, way back in November 2015. So I taught Becca modern calligraphy. And I was standing at the end of my dining room table because I hosted them in my own home at that time. And I was completely blown away at how flawlessly this young lady just picked up the art and the skill. And so I reached out to her a few days later and asked her if she wanted to come on board as one of my teachers. So we got together and we totally hit it off, as I knew we would. And we talked about different areas of business that we could how we could work together. And then I decided, you know what? It wasn't actually a direction of my business that I wanted to go whole hog. In terms of becoming a big, huge teaching conglomerate. So I told Becca that she had my blessing and I'd love to help her set up her own modern calligraphy workshopping business. So I helped her out and here we are.
Here we are talking about business after you helped me start my own. Yeah. So it's kind of an awesome story, and we've told that story quite a few times, but I'm sure there are still people who are new to hearing it. But it's kind of like the perfect example of community over competition, if anybody's ever heard me talk about that before. And so it's just really awesome. And now we are announcing a big project together after this much time. Yeah. So I think we should just go right ahead and say it.
Okay, cool.
So we could say it together. Well, I'll start it off. So as of this exact second, our panic-free pricing course is officially ready for registration. So
Yes.
some of you might have been around when we did our panic-free pricing guide a few years ago, and that was just a PDF guide, and we'll get more into that. But now it's a full-blown course. We've completely revamped it. We have been killing ourselves for the past couple months trying to get this thing up and running, and we are super excited that it's finally here. So I'm going to pop the link up on the screen for those of you who just can't wait and want to check it out. But I don't know if that went up on the screen. I can't tell because it's too slow here. Okay. Sorry, you said it did?
Yeah, I saw it briefly.
It did.
I'm just watching the actual broadcast to make sure, but.
Okay, so yeah, it's ready now. We're going to talk a little bit more about it at the end as well, and Joanne will give you a rundown in a second, but it's actually the price is gonna be $179 Canadian, and from now until Monday, the next Monday, so for 7 days, it's gonna be $99, and that's the lowest it's ever gonna be. So if you guys have heard us talking about pricing all month, you've seen some of the other Q&As that we've been doing, talking a little bit about pricing, and actually those are some guest writers in the new course. Yes. So you've met a couple of them. So it's just really exciting. People are saying they don't see the link, so yeah, I'm going to try again.
So if you want to pop it up again, and I'll put it in the comments too while we're at it.
There we go. So it's really easy. It's just panicfreepricing.com, and yeah, so it's available now, and we'll be talking about it a lot for the next week. We have been talking a lot about pricing, and obviously we're about to do a whole segment here answering questions about pricing. Yeah. But yeah, Joanne, do you want to talk a little bit about what the course is?
The course is amazing. So the original book that we did in September 2017 was just a PDF. It wasn't just. It was a PDF guidebook. It was about 70 pages, and it included a chapter about mindset. It included a whole chapter on real numbers. So we actually included cheat sheets of pricing for categories like personalized gifts and weddings and commercial work. We had a section with pages and pages of photographs of Becca's and my actual work and what we charged for that work. We have a list of resources. So that was the original document back in 2017. And we've since added so much. We've basically taken the original book and blown it up. We invited 5 guests to join us and to write more chapters. So we have chapters now on murals. We have with Haley Berry. We have chapter on wedding digital design with Krista Murphy. We have a chapter on typefaces and fonts with Peggy Dean. We've got an expanded chapter on contracts with Christina Scalera, and we have bonus content. Can we talk about the bonus content?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So we have a bonus chapter at the very, very end of the course, because it's now a course, and it's all about choosing the right website platform. And our host is, why can't I think of her name? Mariah.
Her last name is just really hard to pronounce. Lizuki.
Okay, well, website platform with Mariah. So,
and Mariah is the designer who did my website too, so I completely trust her advice.
Yeah. So, and she's got a really cool flow chart talking about the difference between WordPress, Squarespace, and Shopify. So all of our contributors just went above and beyond. They all provided videos. They all provided chapters in the course or modules in the course, and we're super excited to have them all on board, not only as contributors to the course but also as cheerleaders for the whole community. So and they're all super generous, and in their videos you'll see that they invite you to reach out to them directly if you have questions about their content. So we've just completely grown our little baby, and it's a teenager now, and it's just really
I would go so far as to say that it's an adult now.
It probably is an adult. Yeah, it probably is an adult. You're right. It's really cool to see it kind of take life again. Yeah.
So someone in the comments is asking if it's a self-paced course, and yes, it's completely self-paced. So basically how it works is you get this revamped ebook that we wrote. So now instead of 70 pages, it's almost 100 pages, and it's got all the new. It's got all the new modules and stuff in it. So the workbook or the ebook, whatever you want to call it, is really big and helpful, and you can refer back to it all the time. And then the course works by each module of the ebook also has corresponding video. So you can go through the ebook and have it here while you're watching the video and kind of getting a conversation type video like this where we walk through the whole ebook. And then you also get obviously the bonus that we were talking about, the website bonus, and you get access to a private Facebook group where you can actually get help with your own projects and get some pricing help from peers, and we're in there as well. So all of that put together is $99 for the next week. So if you're interested in it,
that's Canadian, right? So it's even less for American friends. What is it
in
US?
It's about $75 US.
That's crazy. It's like less than half price.
Yeah. So yeah, the link is on the page, and I don't want to spend our whole video talking about it because I've sent you guys all an email, or I will send you guys all an email really shortly with information about it, and you'll hear more about it this week. But yeah, that's our big announcement. So hopefully you guys are as excited as we are because it's something that really needs to be talked about.
Yeah.
Okay, but we also realize that not everybody can purchase that course, or not everybody is ready to. So it's going to be available forever. You can get it whenever you want. But for now, we wanted to still be able to actually just answer as many questions as we could and, you know, give away as much information as we can, because like we said, pricing is something that we really need to talk more about in this industry and raise the value of our worth. So I think we just jump right in and start answering these questions that were submitted beforehand.
Yeah, we got some really great questions. We even had to put our thinking caps on. So good for you guys for coming up with great questions. Thank you.
So for those of you listening, if you didn't already know, we had asked for questions beforehand. So we have a list of questions, and there's quite a few of them. So we're going to get to as many as we can. And then if we have time at the end, we'll take some actual questions live that we'll be able to answer. So if you're listening, just please hold your questions to the end. If you're going to put them in the comments, it'll probably throw us off a little bit. So just keep them till the end, and we'll get to them if we can.
Cool.
Yeah, so let's just do it.
All right, let's go.
Okay, so I'm going to read out the question, and I can't pop the whole question up on the screen because it's really long, but I have a little snippet of it, and then I'm going to read it out for you. So the first question is from Josie, and Josie asked, my workplace, which is a preschool, have noticed me practicing calligraphy on scraps of paper, and they like what they see. So they have asked me to start doing things for them. For example, running the craft stall at our Christmas fair and lettering personalized greeting cards. The problem is they expect me to do this for free. So in this example, customers bought the cards, but the nursery took the proceeds and I got nothing. They didn't ask me if this was okay. They just assumed I would do it because I'm good at it. It's like they don't seem to realize this is a chargeable service at all. So her question is, how do you explain to people that have seen you practicing from your early calligraphy days that you've put a crap ton of time and money into learning this skill with the intention of charging for it, and actually feel like you're ready to charge now? So basically she wants to know, how can she get out of doing things for free once she's already done them a little bit for friends and family?
Yeah, that's a big one. And I think it applies to so many people, right? Because, you know, until we start actually charging and receiving payment for our skill and our talent, we don't have the confidence to ask for what we are worth, right? That it's finding that confidence that is the hardest part. And Josie, I think, you know, if you'd had that confidence early on, the very first time that they asked you to sit at that craft booth and to do the greeting cards, you could have at that time said, oh, well, you know, hang on a second. Like, I appreciate that I work for the preschool, but that's part of my business, and it's a new business, and, you know, I need to get my business off on the right foot. So, you know, maybe because you're my employer, I can give you, you know, my friends and family rate or something like that to kind of ease into that relationship with them. But it is at that point completely about mindset and about you having the gumption to stand up for yourself and really declare with pride and with confidence your rate. Yeah. So I think just try practicing a script with them. And if it takes an email or, you know, a phone call, if you're not comfortable doing it face to face, then you can do it that way. But it definitely requires a conversation, and we're behind you all the way. Go for it.
So I think that it is it is really, really hard at the beginning when maybe you were just doing it for fun and the preschool saw you doing that. And so you weren't in a place where you would say like, oh yeah, I'm just doing this for fun, but you can't have it for free because, you know, like you would, it's just not realistic to ever have done that at the beginning. And
Yeah.
so you kind of get into like an awkward scenario when you do want to start charging for it. And I think, like Joanne said, it's just going to require that awkward conversation, but it just means that you have to be strong in what you're asking for. And there are instances too, I think, where if you are working at the preschool and, you know, you're on work hours and they ask you to do something like letter on a chalkboard, of course, like you want to do that because it's fun and like it's something that you can do in your workplace because you have the skills to do it. But it's different when they're profiting from it. Exactly. So even though the money went to the preschool, which is a great cause, and you're happy to do those greeting cards, it's different when they're making money from it because it means that your skill is valued for money. So I think you should be having that conversation at that point and saying, at least part of it should go to you, and it's up to you if you want to donate it back to the nursery, but they should understand that they can't just assume you're going to do that for free.
Yeah, exactly.
Excuse me. I've been sick for a week in the Philippines and I don't understand. Like I have a cold in the hottest place on earth.
Aww.
Doesn't make any sense. But Joanne, I think you've done that before, right? Too, for one of the places that you've worked.
Yeah, so I have a part-time job where I work at a flower shop, and it's a beautiful little flower shop, very avant-garde, very quirky, and you know, we have chalkboard signs and little handwritten signs all around the shop, and my employer will often say, hey Joe, can you letter this? Can you do a sign up? And I love doing that. Yes, of course. But we also sell gift items, and so my boss and I collaborated on a set of greeting cards for Mother's Day. I think I did like 20 cards. When we sold the cards, I got half, she got half. But that was a conversation we had before I even put my thinking cap on in terms of designing this set of cards. Like, you need to have these conversations before you start the work.
Yeah, so I think it comes down to like you'll have a feeling in your gut when you know that you might be getting a little bit taken advantage of, and just starting to be strong in that and understanding that your time is actually worth money. So that's a really good question to start off with because it gets us going on the mindset issues.
Yeah.
And we talk a ton about this in the course. A lot of the course is mindset stuff and questions like this that come up and how to navigate through stuff like that. So hopefully that helps a little bit, Josie. The next question, let me pop it up here, is how do I price my services if I'm just starting out and I'm not yet an established artist? Is there a basic rate that amateur artists use?
Yeah, so this calculation is one of the very first things that we go through in the course. Becca, I just want to mention that we're getting some tech issues online. Like somebody said they couldn't hear me and somebody said they couldn't hear you. It seems to be working now, but I just wanted to flag it. Okay, so when you're just starting out, you want to think, there are a bunch of different variables, of course, but when you're just starting out, you want to think about what your time is worth to you. And even though we don't promote charging by the hour, and we talk a lot more about that in the course, you want to have what we call your minimum hourly rate in your mind anytime that you're trying to figure out the price of your product or service. Not necessarily that you're going to communicate that hourly rate to your prospect or your client, but it helps you calculate the value of your time. So you want to think about how many hours, like what's your goal income for the year, right? For your hand lettering and calligraphy business. What's your goal income? Do you want to make $5,000, $10,000, $40,000, $100,000 in a year? And then you divide that by your total available hours in the year. How many hours do you want to invest in your business? You also need to think about like setting money aside for taxes. You need to think about setting money aside, like putting money back into your business to cover things like expenses, supplies, materials, things like that. And then you want to think about how much you want to bring home for personal income. So the calculation is laid out in the book and it's laid out in the course, and we go through it with you. But basically what we've boiled down is a recommended minimum hourly rate of $30 an hour. Now that's are Canadian dollars. So I know, woo, that's in Canadian dollars. So you probably want to tweak it for your exchange rate. But and it sounds like a lot of money, but that $30 isn't all, like I say, pizza money. It's not all manicure money. So if we break it down into thirds, which is where we kind of start with our recommendation, a third gets put away for taxes, a third stays in your business account for those expenses and supplies, and a third is your take-home personal income. So of that $30, you get to keep 10, which is still, I mean, at least here in Canada, below minimum wage. So $30 is kind of your minimum hourly rate, at least in our market here. And I think it's pretty similar for most North American countries.
And so that like is the really short form answer, is that your basic hourly rate should be at least $30. And that's for basic beginner calligraphers and letterers. And like you say, not yet an established artist. And so even though you're not yet an established artist, I think a lot of people, when they hear us say $30 an hour, they're like, oh, okay, well, that's for somebody who knows what they're doing and blah, blah, blah. But we are really talking about people who are just starting out. And that's what this course is aimed at. So $30 an hour might seem like a lot, but when we go through it all and break it all down, it makes a lot more sense. And like Joanne said, you're not necessarily telling the client that you charge $30 an hour. That's just what you keep in mind when you're quoting different jobs. And every different project and different type of job will have different parameters and different reasons why you would charge certain things, which we obviously can't get into in a 1-hour video like this. But you keep that $30 in mind and you make sure that you're not dipping below that, because that's when you start to, like Joanne said, make less than minimum wage. So hopefully that is like a really quick answer to the basic rate question.
Yeah.
The next one gets a little bit complicated. So we have a question from Maria, and it's a great question. I've got this one many times. I can't figure out pricing for my area. Our rates are very different from dollar, I guess Canadian or US dollar prices mentioned in the pricing videos. And it just makes it really hard for me to think what I should ask, what won't be too little or too much, etc. for writing couples' names on a wedding envelope, for example. And so I followed up with Maria and I asked where in the world she is, and she said she was in Pakistan. So like Joanne said earlier, all the prices in our book are in Canadian dollars. And so we tell people to deal with that accordingly and figure it out based on where they live in the world. But we also totally understand that not everybody in the world is working with the same kind of cost of living that we are. And so it can actually be pretty different. So I don't know, Joanne, if you want to talk about that a little bit while I take a sip of water.
Yeah, for sure. So Maria, you're in Pakistan. So I don't personally have a handle on what the cost of living is like there. But what you can do is take a little bit of time and do some research on what the cost of living is in your area. And maybe, like I'm sure through censuses and through demographics, population demographics, you could probably determine an average income, like an average middle class income, and use that as your starting point for that calculation that we talked about earlier and that we have in the course. So if the average income is like 300,000 units, whatever your dollar, your currency is there, use that to figure out what your units per hour should be. And I think that would be a safe starting point, because that would then make your hourly rate accessible to those middle class people. I hate that term, but if you're the first person doing what you're doing in your area, you're in a bit of a sweet spot, right? Because you can now set the price, but you want to make sure that it's in line with your market's income.
Yeah, and we're going to get to that one in just a second, because someone else had a question about what if no one else in your area is doing that. Right. But I was going to recommend to Maria that she does a little bit of research and check out what the competition is pricing as well. If there's nobody else doing it, obviously you can't do that. But there are a couple other ways, like you can get creative to figure out what the ballpark range should be if you're the first one inventing it in your area. Like I'm sure you know somebody who has been married before. You could ask them what they paid or what they would be willing to pay for that kind of service. And don't forget that it's a luxury service too, right? So if you're writing couples' names on envelopes for their wedding, that's obviously not a couple who is strapped for cash for their wedding or is on a tight budget, because those are things that are luxury services. So even here in North America, we can charge a premium for them because they're things that are obviously not, what's
It's
the
not
word
a
I'm looking
staple,
for?
right?
It's not a staple. It's not something you have to have for your wedding. So just keep all of those things in mind. But I totally get it. It could be a little bit harder to figure out in those areas. You might just have to do a little bit of extra research.
And talk to your friends too, right? Like, talk to people who are in the demographic of your ideal client. Pull together a little focus group of your friends and talk to them about it. Yeah.
So then along the same lines, the next question was from Lucy, and she asked, what if there is no such service in my area, so I don't know the average cost level?
Yeah, so a lot of the same answer would apply to you, Lucy. But again, do a bit of research, talk to people who might be candidates for your services, ask them what they would be comfortable paying. You're going to get a broad range of answers. And then, of course, it has to resonate with you. It has to feel good for you. If the price that you boil down feels a little low and a little yucky to you and doesn't feel like you're honoring yourself and honoring your worth, then increase it a little bit. Like, find out where your comfort zone is within those ranges that you're going to pick up from people that you talk to. So again, you're in a kind of sweet spot because you get to kind of set the pricing stage for your industry in your area, but it still has to be accessible to your market and it has to feel good to you.
Totally. All right. The next question is an interesting one. And there's a couple different ways we could talk about this one. So Talisa, hopefully I'm saying that right, says, I'm finding it hard not to be ghosted after giving quotes. For example, $150 for a seating chart of 100 names. It's hard as a starter to find clients who are willing to pay the appropriate price. There's also an underlying problem that other calligraphers don't post their price, so we're forced to lower our price to keep clients. How do we go about this? So yeah. I want to let you talk about this, Joanne, a little bit about the ghosting thing. But before we do that, I want to address the underlying problem that other calligraphers don't post their prices, because that's kind of a separate problem. And honestly, we are hoping that by starting more conversations around pricing, that those issues kind of go away. And we talk a lot in the book about community over competition, becoming friends with the other people in your area and understanding how much they're charging. But that can be a really tricky one. And I just want to say that you don't necessarily want to be matching perfectly what someone else is pricing, or you don't want to be lowering your prices to meet theirs. I think you should just kind of try and forget about what the other people are saying and don't necessarily be trying to compete with them all the time on price.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely try to develop a network of letterers in your area and support each other the way Becca and I do, and a handful of other Ottawa artists. We really just cheer each other on, and we vent to each other, and we share work and things like that. So if you can try to build that little community, that would be a great thing for you. In terms of clients ghosting, I mean, I've sent out hundreds and hundreds of quotes, and a lot of times people just won't get back to you. In this day and age, kind of customer service and email etiquette has lacked a little bit, and people aren't always going to give you the courtesy of a reply. It doesn't mean that your pricing is out of line. It just means that it's not in line for them. So try not to take it personally. I would be curious, though, to see how you're presenting your quotes. Are you just saying it's going to be $150, or are you kind of walking them through your process in coming to that price? Like, I would recommend in that example that you actually spell out, okay, my rate for setting up the design for your seating chart is $50. And my rate per name is $1 in this particular style. Like, really spell it out. Don't get into your hourly rate. They don't need to know that, but what you need to do is educate them. Give them some indication about the time that it's going to take you and the effort. And, sometimes you want to go a little, go the extra mile and describe, if we're going to go with this style over, cursive instead of block letters, or maybe the size of the wedding chart has something to do with your pricing. Like, really go overboard in describing what you're offering for that price. And it gives the client kind of that comfort level It helps them feel confident in your abilities. It helps them think that you know what you're doing. So I would look more carefully at how you're presenting your pricing to your clients, and then ask at the bottom of your proposal or your bottom of your quote, please reply. Let me know your thoughts, whether or not you wish to proceed. I'd still love to hear back from you, or something like that. Like really invite them to get back to you. And if it's not in their budget, that's not your problem, right? You don't have to adjust your pricing for your client's budget. That's a big no-no.
Absolutely. And I think the other part to this question was that she said that it's hard as a starter, as a beginner, to find a client who's willing to pay the appropriate price. But you have to remember that the client doesn't necessarily need to know that you're a beginner. If you're producing the quality of work that they're looking for, and if they're coming to you and asking for a quote, they agree with your quality and they are looking to hire you for that job. So you don't necessarily need to say, well, the average is $1 per name, but I'm a beginner, so I'm going to charge you 75 cents. And that might actually be worse because the client won't want to hire you if you say that. So don't even think about the fact that you're a beginner when you're giving those prices. Be confident in your prices. And like Joanne said, if you're going by the prices that we've explained in previous videos or in the course and you're still getting ghosted, it's not necessarily the price. It's that it could be a combination of a million different factors on the clients. And then you have to remember that they've probably sent out a bunch of different quote requests from people because, like Joanne said, it's so easy now. And the age of kind of that customer service it's so easy to get a quote. So they might not have even been super serious about hiring you. They were just trying to price shop and that kind of stuff. So you have to really try and not take it personally. And even now, I would say I probably get, I don't know, between 5 to 10 requests for every job that I book. So it's not just you. Yeah. It's a lot of people that happens to. And don't feel bad about sending them an email afterwards too. If you have gotten ghosted, I mean, don't email them and say like, why didn't you hire me? But email them and say like, just following up, my schedule is filling up and I want to make sure that I keep that slot open for you if you're still interested. And usually they'll tell you, oh, I went with someone else, or, oh, I couldn't afford it. I didn't realize it was going to be that expensive, because a lot of people don't realize how expensive lettering is. So
yeah, that's right.
So long story short, don't feel bad about it.
Yeah.
All right. Maureen. The next one is an interesting one. And I think Joanne and I tend to get fired up about this one. So Maureen asked, she said, I'd love your thoughts on handling people who ask if you offer discounts. I usually respond that the prices listed on my website are my discounted prices. I usually run away from people who ask for discounts because they tend to be difficult to please and rather high maintenance. I prefer to refer them to other calligraphers who charge more than I do, with a winky face.
Yeah.
So I'll let you kick this one off, Joanne.
Yeah. So my first thought when I read the question was that your prices on your website, I don't personally think that they should be your discounted prices. The prices on your website should be your full worth, shout proud what your prices are, what your rates are. And I love that you're transparent on your website and that you have your prices there, but they should be your full prices. And then that gives you the flexibility to discount them at your discretion if you want to discount at all. We have a whole chapter in the book on a philosophy that is called full price or free.
Someone just said that in the comments, and I love whoever does that.
Full price or free, that's right. Beck, do you want me to talk a little bit about full price or free?
Well, I can kick it off if you want.
Sure.
So Joanne and I both learned this from another letterer, Sean McCabe, or Sean West, as you might know him. And he does a lot of education about business practices and stuff like that, but he's also a hand letterer. And so he was the first one to introduce us to this, but it just makes a lot of sense where if someone asks you for a discount, generally the way that you should start to think about it, or the way that Joanne and I both do, is this person someone who I would do the work for free for? So is it my mom? Is it my sister? Is it my best friend getting married and they're asking me to do their project for them?
Or
in that case,
that I particularly support, right? It can be a nonprofit or a charity.
Right.
A charity. Yeah.
Is it somebody that I feel totally happy not making any money off of? Mm-hmm. If the answer is yes, do it for free. Don't do it for a discount. If the answer is no, do it for full price. And the reason is that in both of those instances, the person that you're doing the work for still fully values your work at its full price. So if you do something for free for somebody, and I generally recommend that you still write them an invoice and just tally the bottom to zero, so they know exactly how much that work would have cost and they value you at that full worth.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to do it for full price, then you do it for full price. So it makes it a lot easier when you have people like friends and family coming, and you have to be able to draw a line and say, okay, I would do it for free for these 5 people. Anybody outside of that, I do it full price. And so it just makes it less awkward because you don't have to give a discount to your neighbor and not your neighbor 2 doors down, and all of those awkward in between scenarios. And it also, like I said, it just makes everybody value your work. It makes you feel better about it. And like Maureen said, you're not going to get those nightmare clients who are trying to lowball you on everything and trying to discount every single thing you do. So it helps you stick to your guns.
Every time I've discounted my work, it always ends up being a high maintenance, negative energy situation. The example that I like to use too is when you go to the grocery store and you buy a can of tomatoes that's on sale, usually it's $1.99, but it's on sale for 79 cents. You value that can of tomatoes at 79 cents. It doesn't matter what the original price is, you're valuing it at 79 cents. So if your hourly rate is $80 an hour, but you discount your rate to $50 an hour, and that trickles through to your pricing, then your client is only going to value it $50 an hour, and that just doesn't feel good, and it sets the tone of the energy for the whole project. So definitely full price or free. And as Becca said, when it comes time to actually invoice or even do an estimate, put the full price, but then give them 100% discount for the free, so they're seeing what the value is. I just did that recently with a client. She'd been getting me to do a lot of little things. She's actually the woman who organized my recent trip to Thailand, and she was getting me to do a few little things for the trip. And on one of the last invoices, I indicated the full price. It was just a small little thing, $150, and I zeroed it out and I sent it off to her. She didn't know that was coming. She was expecting the full fare. And she wrote me back, "Joanne, can you send me a real invoice now?" And I just was like, no, this one's on me. And she was super, super grateful because she saw the value. She valued the work at that rate, and she really appreciated the gift.
But if you had done that at a discount and you would have sent her a thing that said, if it was maybe worth $150 and you sent her a thing that was like, 75, she would have been like, well, I wonder where that number came from. Like, why wasn't it $50? Like, why is it 75? Right. What am I only that important to her? It just makes really awkward scenarios.
It makes it really awkward.
It makes everything easier if you think about it right off the bat. Will I do this for free? If the answer is no, do it full price.
Yeah. And if full price doesn't work for them, then they can go to find somebody at a different rate.
Yeah. And again, like we've said this a lot of times, but we get really in depth into this in the ebook and the course, because we talk about actually how to deal with friends and family pricing, and those awkward scenarios where those are always the people who want a discount, even though they should be the ones who pay you full price. Anyway, besides the point.
There's a whole section on what we call red flag clients, how to spot them, how to deal with them. So worth the price of admission.
So hopefully that helps, Maureen. I know it can be a little tricky and sometimes you have to really stand your ground. But we've found, and a lot of other people that we have talked about this with have found the same thing, where if you start to discount, it just becomes a nightmare. So this is a great rule to start implementing. The next question is, what's the best way to calculate or differentiate pricing for personal versus business use? For instance, if you're doing aisle signs for a bride whose wedding planner wants to buy them back for use with with future brides.
That's kind of a two-parter, right? I wrote the chapter in the course, or the module in the course, about commercial work only because I have so much experience with commercial clients. It was the foundation of my business for 25 years. And you really do price things differently for commercial use. Anytime that you're doing work that affects your client's bottom line, so whether it's signage that brings customers into their restaurant, or whether it's their business card or their logo or marketing materials, that's all affecting their revenue, right? It affects how their audience perceives their business. It affects the the emotional response of their audience to make a purchase with them. So it is affecting their bottom line. Oftentimes too, like what you're actually producing is sold by your client. So if we go back to the greeting cards example, I forget the person's name, but the nursery school person, like you're actually creating the product that is being sold. So that's a very direct example of your product or service bringing in your client revenue. In this case, we're talking about rentals, I think, right? To buy back to rent to future brides. So, Becca, I think you have a little bit of use doing work that ends up being rental in the wedding industry, yeah?
Yeah, so I actually have a stipulation in my contract that mentions whether or not the bride is going to, or the bride or the bride's wedding planner is going to keep that item and rent it or sell it afterwards. So there's a clause in my contract that says they're not allowed to do that at the price that I'm quoting them for personal use for their wedding. And if they want to do that, if they're going to sell it afterwards, I charge double, and if they're going to rent it, I charge triple. And so when somebody asks me about that, those are the prices that I give them because, like Joanne said, that's going to make them money eventually. And it means that my work is more valuable to them. So that's how I deal with it.
Yeah. And you want to hope that they're being honest with you, you know, like it's not an easy thing to follow up on unless you happen to have people out at a wedding that's, you know, like, Becca, I think I saw your work at this wedding, and it's a hard thing to follow up on. So there's a lot of trust involved, but
there's a lot of trust. There's a hope that your client is actually reading your contract, but there's a couple of ways that you can kind of deal with it. So I know myself and a lot of other people who do wedding work will generally try and put something custom on every sign. So the bride and groom's name or the date or something like that. And if the client doesn't want that and is pretty clear that they don't want anything custom on it, then you have the opportunity to ask them the question because that's probably why. And then I also am a member in a bunch of like wedding buy and sell Facebook groups. So that's a way to keep an eye on things. You can see if somebody's going to resell your work. But it has happened and it sucks when it happens. So it's really good to have that in your contract.
Yeah.
All right. So
how are we doing
next
for time? 6:17. Whew.
Almost an hour so far. Yeah. So the next two questions are both about Chalkboard. So I kind of lumped them together. Maria and Alex both asked about Chalkboard. So Maria said that she is thinking of offering Chalkboard services for cafes and restaurants, but she wants to maybe do it as a subscription service rather than a one-off. So go back many times and update them. So she has no idea how to charge for that. So Joanne, I know you have done lots of chalkboards for cafes and stuff, so maybe you want to talk about that one.
Yeah, I've done a lot of chalkboards for cafes and restaurants, and in fact, I had a scenario where I was quoting a service similar to what you're talking about, Maria. So in this particular case, they had a specific wall painted off as a chalkboard, and they wanted to keep that updated on a monthly basis for upcoming events. They had live music and, like, you know, whiskey tastings and different events that they already had outlined on their calendar, and they wanted me to come in every month at the beginning of every month or the very end of the previous month to completely wipe the board clean and update it with new stuff. So instead of calling it a subscription service, I referred to it as a retainer. They were going to hire me on a monthly retainer, and I don't remember the specifics, but basically I figured out how many hours I would need to set aside for that job every month, and it was probably a full day of my time. So, you know, at that time it probably would have been like $500 to $700 for the day. So my retainer was that number of dollars every month. And by signing that retainer contract, the client would have been responsible to pay me that amount, whether I went in or not, whether it took the full day or not, whether it was a full update or not. She's basically reserving that day out of my schedule every month, and she would have been contractually obligated to pay me that, you know, whether all of the time was used or not. And if it took me a day and a half, then that's on me, right? Like, that retainer amount was kind of set in stone. I could have specified that if it took more than a day, that, you know, X hourly rate was applied above and beyond our retainer amount. That never ended up happening. They changed ownership, and the new owner didn't bite on that service. But that's how I would set it up, so that you're protected, because you are going to put that that time aside in your calendar for that client every month or every week or whatever that period of time is, and just get them to sign it. Do a contract, get them to sign it, and stipulate, what that rate includes, how many hours or whatever the increment is that you're specifying. Yeah.
And it might take a while to get to that kind of point too. So the better idea might be to develop a relationship with that client and do some one-off jobs for them in the beginning until they're familiar with your work and you know how long it takes you to do things. And then you can talk to them about having a retainer project like that.
Yeah.
The other thing to keep in mind about it too is I know people who have assumed that they could start a retainer project with somebody, or just not even necessarily have a retainer, but have just sort of an agreement with them, not in writing, but saying that they will be the person who updates the chalkboards, and they can assume that they'll do it about once a month and they'll be paid X amount. But I know people who have been screwed by that. So meaning that they assume that they're going to do it, and then all of a sudden they go back in and a different artist has done it. Yes. So if you're gonna try and do it, make sure that you have a contract, make sure you have that retainer, and all of the stipulations are put out there and it's signed and agreed upon, like Joanne said.
Yeah. There's nothing worse than expecting work to come in and kind of budgeting for it, both in time and in your own income, and then finding out that it's been yanked out from under you. Like, it's awful. So get it in writing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so part of Maria's question also was how much to charge, but Alex asked a similar question. So Alex asked, I'd love to include chalkboard, window, mural art in my services. So I thought I'd start by offering work to cafes in my area. Should I start out free of charge, or should I have a minimal rate? And how should that price increase over time?
Anytime that you're doing work outside of your own studio or your own space, you need to be charging way more for it. Like, my studio rate is $85 an hour, but if I have to leave my home or my studio and I'm going to be working in my client's environment, my rate is at least $100 an hour. It's actually closer to $125 now, just because, for so many reasons, and we go through all the reasons in the course. But anytime you're on site, anytime you're on demand, your time is worth so much more. So, I mean, those rates are pretty high. I've been doing this for a long time, and people in my area know me as kind of like the chalkboard lady. But don't do it for free. That's a bad idea. That's a bad idea, and I could go on a little bit of a tear about it. And you don't, like, there's no minimum rate either. Like, you need to start at that $30 an hour minimum that we talked about earlier. Flex that depending on your skill level, your confidence, your experience, and
what the job is.
That's your studio rate. Yeah, like, there's so many variables, and Haley does an amazing job in her chapter on murals about all the variables that you need to take into consideration when you're doing mural work or window work, right? Like, Becca, you ran into a situation recently where the client perceived the value of your window work way less than it actually took you in time and materials. And so there was a breakdown at the end of that, when you went to invoice it, because there was, just that breakdown. But you need to value your time when you're on site, and don't undercut yourself.
I think there are instances too, when we talk about this in the book, is for bartering and trading and services like that. The problem is usually with a cafe or something like that, you're not really getting the value of your work back in muffins or whatever that they have to offer. But if you're doing it for someone who has something to offer, so for example, I did a window front for someone who opened up a wedding boutique, and she let me use her wedding boutique for a venue for my workshops. And so that is an equal value barter and trade. So it's different in that instance. But just because you want to get experience, I would not go to a commercial establishment and say, I'll do this for free, because then they will never value it at full price. And then you'll never have the opportunity, like we were talking about with Maria, to do it on a subscription service or to keep doing it monthly and that kind of stuff.
If you want to add stuff to your portfolio, so that you've got, full lineup of examples of your work, do that stuff in your own home, and just take photos of it as if they were at a client's house. Your audience doesn't need to know that they were practice projects. Ask your best friend if you can do something on their window, or do something on their mirror, or do something on their wall, right? Just keep doing the work that you love, photograph it, get beautiful photography done, and set yourself up with a really great portfolio. Nobody needs to know that they were just personal projects.
Yep. And when you do have opportunities to do proper bartering and trading, make sure, again, that you get really good photos of it and take advantage of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. The next two questions, again, both were about workshops. So I kind of lumped them together here.
And
this is one of the
on workshops, which is so great. So great.
Yeah. So in our old guide, we didn't have anything on this, but we had so many people give us feedback that they wanted help pricing their own workshops. And so we have a whole new, brand new big section on that one. So the first question here is from Noura, and she said, I have a question regarding pricing workshops when you're collaborating with a store. If they're going to look after the space, the supplies, the registration, refreshments, how much should you be charging for teaching the workshop? And should you charge per person or per hour? So this is a big question.
Yeah, it's a big question, but I think it's actually a rather simple answer. So if you're basically walking into a teaching situation where everything is covered, you don't have to put, a dime on the table. All the student materials are there. They've done all the printing of your worksheets. They've got an easel and a flip chart and all your presentation tools. If you don't have to spend a penny on it, then you're basically going in and doing a live lettering scenario or a teaching scenario. And in that case, I probably would specify an hourly rate or a per person rate. So you could go either way. But you want to make sure that the per person rate equals your hourly rate. And you want to have a good communication with the venue person or the shop owner. You want to know how many people to expect. You could set a variable in your estimate, like if you are getting 5 to 10 people, this is what I would charge. If you're getting 11 to 15 people, this is what I would charge, 16 to 20 and so on, so that they know accordingly, because the number of people around the table affects your level of involvement with each person, right? And it's much harder to teach a bigger group because you're bustling all around and you have to take time to help each person, and people put their hands up all the time and need help. So I do think that the more people around the table, the more valuable your time is. So in that case, maybe rating or pricing per person would be more profitable for you. Let's go with that. That would be my recommendation, would be to go per person, but you need to know up front how many people to expect. Yeah. What about you, Becca? What do you think?
Well, I was going to say, when you said that if it's an opportunity for you to just walk in and teach it, I was just going to say how rare that is, that you don't have to do any of the work on your own.
Yeah.
You also have to remember that you have to do prep for that. So you have to take into consideration how much time you're putting in to prep for the course, and also just the value of your knowledge. And so we talk about this in our workshop section, but if you're going in and teaching a group of 20 people, paint night format where you sit down and you teach them how to paint a sunset, and everybody walks out with that same sunset, but they couldn't necessarily go home and know how to paint because you didn't teach them the skill, you just taught them the project, then it's a little different. You can charge a lot less for something like that. But if you're sitting down with a group of 10 people and teaching them all a brand new skill, like teaching them calligraphy that they could potentially turn into a business or use to make money on their own, then your value of that workshop is a lot higher.
Yeah.
So there are so many variables when it comes to pricing workshops, but it basically comes down to all the different things that you have to pay for to put into it. So you can, like, the best thing to do is to make a spreadsheet of all of the costs that are going to be involved for you. And one of those costs is your time and all the prep time for all of that. Don't forget. And then how much the supplies are going to cost. If the participants get to keep the supplies, if they don't, if they can't, can you reuse them, or are they kind of getting thrown out after? All that kind of stuff. And the other thing to keep in mind too, I think, is if the venue is going to be making a lot of publicity off of you, and if they're making money off of the workshop, so you have to think about that. Like if you're pricing, if you're telling them that you want $45 per person, but then they're going to charge another $45 per person so they can make that profit, then it's not really going to work. So you have to have an open dialogue, like Joanne said, with the venue, and figure out a price that works for them, works for you, and works for the people that are going to be coming.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think what Michelle and Noura were both hoping for was that we tell them how much we usually charge for our workshops. Because I think that's normally, I think that's the most useful thing. So I think ours are pretty similar, Joanne. So my most popular workshop is an intro to brush calligraphy, and it's 3 hours long. Actually, it's 2.5 hours. The customers get to keep their kit of supplies, and that's all included. And my standard rate for that is $100 plus tax.
Right. And when I teach modern calligraphy with the ink and the nib, again, they get to go home with worksheets, samples of paper, tissue paper, Rhodia grid paper, their nib, their ink, their handle, their pencil. Mine's 3 hours, and I charge 110. So yeah.
And so, but like, I have also done workshops in the past where I think the lowest I've ever walked out with is $45 per person.
Right.
But the ticket price was higher than that. So the venue took a little bit, and the students didn't get to keep the supplies, and the workshop was only an hour and a half long. So you have to think about the value of that and how different it can be depending on the length of the workshop, how many people are in it, and all of those different factors.
Yeah, loads of variables, and we go through those in the course in lots of detail.
Okay, the next one is going to require me to do a bit of talking. So actually, Joanne, do you mind reading this one?
No, I don't mind.
Okay, so I'll read the question.
Okay.
So the question is from Lindsay, and Lindsay asked about pricing for wedding invitation suites. So she said, hold on, let me take one sip.
Oh.
She said, I design wedding invitation suites, and I was wondering what a good base or starting price would be for semi-custom and fully custom suites. I've seen calligraphers price their semi-custom suites starting at $1,700 and others on Etsy starting at $500. Etsy is a whole freaking nightmare anyway. From the looks of it, the starting packages are similar, but those prices are clearly wildly different. So what's a good price to start at if I'm starting out in this business and want to attract clientele for my portfolio?
Okay, you mute yourself and cough your head off, and I'll read the answer. Okay, I'm going to read this. So, Lindsay, for this one, inside the full course, we've recruited Krista Murphy, who is Wish Tree Invites and Design, and she does this for a living. And she taught a whole module on pricing specifically for wedding suites and the graphic design portion of wedding work. So, since she's the expert, we sent her your question ahead of time, and we're just going to read her response for you. I totally recommend checking out the interview that Becca did with her from a few weeks ago. So here's Krista's response. Break it down per invite. This makes the pricing seem less scary and allows the client to control the amount needed. For a basic suite, whether semi or full custom, a good base would be invite, RSVP, and envelope. Add-ons such as assembly, wax seals, map cards, etc. would be extra. Consider the amount materials cost and the amount of time that goes into creating these. Full custom would obviously be more since you're having to create all new each time, which means more time, right? A good base start would be $5 each and increase from there based on complexity, time, and materials. Also, as you build your portfolio, styled shoots are a great way to do this and attract your dream clientele. You can gradually increase your pricing.
So long story short, Krista says the minimum base to start at would be $5 for that suite, and that would include the invite, RSVP, and envelope. So that's just for the graphic design portion. And I know, Lindsay, when I talked to you in the Facebook group, you had said that you also do the hand lettering portion, and sometimes you write the names and then you customize them for the suite. So that would be an add-on as well. So you need to think about that. And in the course, we actually have a section just on how to price the lettering part, and then also how to price the graphic design part and how to put it all together. So those are two separate sort of pieces. But hopefully Krista's answer helped you, because Joanne and I are not experts on the graphic design for wedding invites. And so Krista does a really good job in the course. And yeah, like Joanne said, I did a live Q&A. Oh my God. Sorry, guys. I did
Let's
a
all
live
give
Q&A
like hug
with,
emojis to Becca in the comments.
I didn't realize I was this sick until I started this conversation.
Oh,
Um, yeah, but I did a live Q&A with Krista, and she talked all about wedding stationery and stuff like that. And again, she wrote that part of the course, so it's all in there.
yeah.
The next question is from Megan, and Megan asked, "I'm wondering if you have a big mirror that you've purchased and rent out in the price of doing seating charts. Do you have a deposit that you refund if there's damage? Just curious how you do this." So I guess I'll take this one, Joanne, because I know you don't do this.
No.
So I get this question a lot because I do a lot of seating charts, and I actually don't usually rent out any pieces for that. I usually require that the client brings me whatever they want me to write on, and that's the easiest way to do it, obviously, because you're not on the hook for dealing with any of that. I have a couple that I use if the client really doesn't have anything, or if they've seen one that I've done in the past and they ask me about it. I have, I think, 3 in my garage, but I also just don't want a big inventory of seating charts like that. So when I do rent them out, it depends how long the customer wants to keep them for. But I tend to try and keep it at like a normally it'll be like $40 to rent it for the amount of time they need the seating chart for, which is usually like a week. And I do have a contract, or have some stipulations in my contract if there are rentals where if there's damage, yeah, there's a deposit. I usually, and we talk about this in the course too, that you should be getting 50% of the job up front, no matter what. So if they're giving me all of the money when they pick up the seating chart, I have that deposit already. And then if they break the mirror, then obviously they don't get it back. And yeah, that just make sure it's in your contract if you're doing that. And yeah, you don't have to have rentals. I think a lot of people assume that if they're going to be doing big signage and stuff that they need to have the rentals to offer people, but you can really easily just tell people that you only write on whatever they provide to you. So that's the easiest way to do it, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. Rentals are a whole other, like, that's a whole other, I was gonna say nightmare, but it's hard. It's not easy to manage rental stuff.
Yeah, and I've teamed up with people in the past, like, and you can do some research in your city and find people who do rentals and kind of start a referral program where if your clients are looking for rentals, you can send them to them, and if their clients are looking for calligraphy, they send them to you. So that works out really well. I've done that before. That's the way I would recommend to do it.
Yeah.
Okay,
One
Joanne,
more question. Can you get
we're
through
at
it?
yes, we're at the last question.
All right.
So Sarah asked, and this is a really good question. How do you deal with estimates versus final invoices, especially for projects that aren't hard goods or you don't need supplies? For example, digital invitation design. If you feel the estimate isn't accurate, what do you do? Eat the cost? Can your invoice end up being different than your estimate?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Sarah. We have a really great module in the course called Estimates, Invoices, and Contracts, and we talk about the importance of each one and what needs to be included in each one. For me, your estimate is kind of like a soft contract. You're really being very, very clear in your estimate about what's included in it. You've got a bunch of fine print, like how many revisions does it include? What's your rate after, so let me just be completely open with you guys. On my estimates for design work or, commissions, like if I'm doing somebody's brush lettering, baby certificate, I'm not doing an estimate. Like, it's probably a conversation we've had by email. But for those larger commercial projects specifically, I do have an estimate, and in the fine print, I stipulate that the subtotal includes 2 rounds of revisions, and any revisions beyond that will be billed at X number of dollars per hour. So it's up to me to communicate with the client throughout the project that this is the second set of revisions. I just want to remind you that anything outside of this is going to be billed accordingly. There should be no surprises when they get the invoice, is basically what this boils down to. Your estimate is going to be as close to a contract as you can get without it actually being a contract. And you want them to sign off on it or reply to your email with, yeah, looks great, let's proceed, so that you have that paper trail, you have their written agreement that the estimate is kind of set in stone. And then as things change, you can either requote the job, or you can just keep communicating with the client. Let them know what the changes are as you're going through the project so that there are no surprises at the time of invoice. Yeah.
And when you say communicate with a client, you mean in writing? Like ideally you're getting emails.
Totally in writing. You got to keep, like, cover your butt. You've got to keep that paper trail for sure. And texting and Facebook Messenger is not, sorry, I just got a notification on my phone, is not a reliable source of communication. Stick with email when you're dealing with clients for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I have found that anytime I've gotten really comfortable with a client, like when they seem like they're going to be the greatest client and you get along really well, and maybe you're texting them because it's easier and you can just say like, here's what's going on. Do you like it so far? Kind of thing. Yep. That's fine depending on the client. But when you need to do actual things that come down to money exchanges, they need to be in emails, and it can be awkward sometimes, but it'll cover your butt. And it always ends up being those clients that get too comfortable where they're going to get mad at the end when they say like, oh, you didn't tell me about this, and you just assumed they would have been fine with it and all that. So keep it all in writing. But yeah, as long as there's been a paper trail and you've kept them up to date, like Joanne said, there should be no surprises with the invoice, and it can differ. They should know that it's going to be different.
Yeah, that's right.
Awesome. Well, I just put a note up on the screen for people to submit their questions. So I'm thinking maybe we take a couple if there are any, but it is really early in the morning in some places and really late at night in some places for me. So I don't know if we'll get any questions, but hopefully we have covered, I mean, I know we have covered a lot of things in this conversation, and it's a lot to take in when you're a beginner. There are a lot of different aspects that go into it, but once you get more comfortable with it and you understand the value of your work, it becomes a lot easier to stand your ground and price all of these things properly.
Yeah.
So,
and that's the beauty of the Facebook group, right? Like when you sign up for the course, you get access to our private Facebook group. And I don't know how many members we have in there just from the original book, because we've had this group for a couple of years now, but there are a lot of members in there, and we cheer each other on, and we post the photos of the work, and we talk about how much it's worth, and we talk about like pain in the butt clients, and we talk about friends and family, and like all the issues that kind of come up regularly are addressed in a really open and supportive way in the group. So that's a great place to build your confidence. And even if you want to like share a quote with somebody beforehand, or share a bit of a sales pitch, like it's just such an open, inviting community there, and we're all there to support each other. So I definitely recommend joining that group when you buy the course.
Yeah. So, okay. So no more questions are rolling in unless my internet is just not working properly, which I'm going to take as a sign that we blew people's minds and they can't think very well right now. So I'm just going to pop up the link to the course one more time on the screen. Okay. And if anybody has any questions about that, feel free to put them in the Facebook group. You can leave them on this video if you want to ask any questions about that, or you can email either of us. And I just got some questions rolling. Okay. So I think let's just take the first three and then call it a day. So the first question up on here is, I'm from Indonesia. I wonder if I should charge differently for local market versus international clients.
I think you price, that is a good question. We need to go back to the Pakistan question, right? Like, if the international client's cost of living and value of their currency is completely different than it is where you are, then you may need to flex your pricing. Like, I was just in Chiang Mai, Thailand for a week, and the cost of things was so different than it is now. I could never charge what I charge here in Thailand, but then, if I was in Thailand and charging accordingly, then I would charge according to that cost of living. Do you know what I mean? Like, my income needs would be different if I was in that country. So I wouldn't need to charge as much for my own personal income. So I think that's, what do you think, Becca?
It's a tough one because I'm trying to think about it in terms of other industries as well.
Yeah. Like if you
So
go
for
on to
example,
an international website, you pay, like everybody would pay the same, right? With the cost of your product or service.
yeah, but for example, like you can get, if you're in North America and you're trying to hire somebody for a certain job, you can get cheaper prices
Right.
by going
Overseas.
internationally. But that
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily in this instance apply, because I think that if you're an artist and someone's coming to you for your artwork, say you have a print and someone likes your print and wants you to make them a custom one. If you're in Indonesia and someone in North America is asking you for that print, I think you could totally charge them in North American standards.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So
yeah,
I think you should be charging based on where the person lives.
Yeah.
And I mean, other people might disagree. That's an interesting question. I think it's going to have my wheels turning after this conversation, but
we may
I think
have
that's how I would go about it.
Cool. Okay.
Okay. The next question is about the course. So maybe we'll skip that one and do one more about pricing, and then we'll come back to that. So
Sure.
The next one is, hi, I found Hungarian VAT adding to the price. Why is it there? It's new. Did not realize by ordering. Okay, so we're talking again about the course when you're trying to purchase the course. It's probably because you haven't put in your address yet or anything like that. So it should only be charging you your own currency. So if you're in Hungary, that'll be added. But if not, it shouldn't be added at all. It should just be in Canadian dollars. And then someone asked, would it be useful to get your book if I'm just contemplating trying to sell my work but undecided?
Yes. Especially this week while it's on sale. $79. That's like, you're going to make that up in no time. I mean, it's 99, but 79 in the US. You will make up the cost of that little investment in no time with your business. So it's definitely worth registering for the course now. You'll have access to it for as long as it's online. You can log in anytime you want. You can go back over it, rewatch the videos, reread the book. Yeah, it's definitely a worthwhile investment, even if you haven't sold anything yet, or somebody hasn't asked you to do something for money yet. It's definitely going to help you get into the right mindset. So when you are ready, you're good to hit the ground running.
And I think it actually might just push you over the edge. If you're just thinking about it, it'll probably make you want to do it. So I would say yes. And I'm happy that you're starting to think about it now, because most people do the pricing thing too late and they've made mistakes already. So you're in a good spot if you're just getting started.
Yeah. It's like we're holding your hands the whole way through the process. So go for it.
Yeah. All right. So guys, we're going to jump off of here. It's late at night here and it's early in the morning for Joanne, and I really need to blow my nose. So the link is up on the screen. It's panicfreepricing.com. And again, just feel free to send either of us an email or talk to us in the Facebook group about this course. We're really excited about it. And you're going to get emails from me with all the links you need and stuff too. So thank you so much, Joanne, for answering all these questions. Even if people aren't going to take the course, I think it'll be super helpful. So
yeah, for sure. Thanks everybody for joining us.
All right. We will talk to you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.